You think you quit because it hurts.
You don't. You quit because it's boring. Pain is sharp. Pain is dramatic. Pain makes a story. Boredom is flat, and flatness feels unbearable. When you start something new, it's exciting. New routine, new goal, new discipline. Your mind is stimulated. You feel progress because everything is unfamiliar. But progress does not stay unfamiliar. It becomes repetitive. Repetition removes novelty, and without novelty, the brain searches for stimulation. This is where most people collapse, not at the peak of difficulty, not in extreme suffering, in monotony. The workout becomes routine, the study becomes predictable, the business becomes process, the relationship becomes ordinary, and the ordinary feels suffocating. You mistake that suffocation for a sign that it's wrong, a sign that it's not for you, a sign that something is missing. But nothing is missing. You are simply no longer entertained. Mastery is not exciting. It is repetitive. It is structured. It is boring. The beginning gives you dopamine. The middle demands discipline, and most people never survive the middle. They say they're burned out. They say they need something new. They say they've outgrown it. But what they've actually outgrown is stimulation. Boredom exposes your relationship with discomfort, because boredom is quiet discomfort. It doesn't scream. It lingers. It asks you to stay when nothing feels dramatic. Pain activates survival. Boredom activates restlessness. Restlessness searches for escape, and escape is easy. Scroll, switch, start something new, quit quietly. The brain prefers novelty over consistency. It prefers spikes over stability. It prefers excitement over repetition. But growth lives in repetition. Think about the strongest people you know, the most disciplined, the most consistent. Do you think their days are thrilling? No. They repeat. They show up. They execute. They endure monotony without collapsing. The world glorifies pain. It does not warn you about boredom. But boredom is the real filter. Pain can be endured for short bursts. Boredom must be endured for years. That is why most people stay average, not because they cannot handle suffering, because they cannot handle repetition. They need constant stimulation to stay engaged, and life does not provide that. The highway to anything meaningful is long, straight, unremarkable, day after day that looks the same. You start with energy, you continue with structure. If you rely on energy, you stop when it fades. If you build structure, you move when it's dull. This is the truth. You are not defeated by pain. You are defeated by monotony. And monotony does not look dangerous. It looks ordinary. So you underestimate it, until you find yourself starting over, again, and again, and again. Part of discipline is learning to sit in the uneventful, to work when it feels repetitive, to continue when nothing feels new. If you can survive boredom, you eliminate most of your competition, because most people quit the moment things stop feeling interesting. And that moment comes far earlier than they expect. Boredom is not neutral. It feels threatening, not because it hurts, because it removes stimulation, and your brain is addicted to stimulation. When something is new, dopamine rises. You feel engaged, alert, alive. When something becomes familiar, dopamine drops. The task doesn't change, your chemistry does. And when dopamine drops, the mind interprets it as loss. Loss of excitement, loss of progress, loss of meaning. But nothing has been lost, only novelty. The modern world has trained you poorly. Infinite scrolling, constant notifications, endless entertainment. Your baseline for stimulation is distorted. Repetition now feels intolerable. So when discipline becomes routine, it feels empty. You wake up, you train, you work, you repeat. No surge, no thrill, no dramatic shift, just process. And process feels flat. Flat feels pointless. Pointless feels like failure. This is misinterpretation. Flat does not mean ineffective. Flat means stable. The brain confuses intensity with progress. If it doesn't feel intense, it assumes nothing is happening. But intensity is not the measure. Consistency is. Most people require emotional spikes to continue. They need inspiration. They need urgency. They need crisis. Without that, they drift. Drift is quiet quitting. Not dramatic exit, just reduced effort. Lower standards, more distraction. Boredom creates a psychological vacuum, and the mind rushes to fill it. New goal, new routine, new identity. Because new feels alive. But new resets the cycle. You return to the exciting beginning, then face the same middle, then quit again. This is the pattern of average performance, chasing novelty, avoiding monotony, repeating the same arc endlessly. Understand this clearly. Boredom is the gatekeeper of depth. If you can sit in repetition without seeking stimulation, you move deeper. If you escape repetition, you stay shallow. Depth requires long stretches of sameness, the same drills, the same habits, the same conversations, the same systems. You think mastery is built on breakthroughs. It is built on maintenance. Maintenance is boring, but maintenance prevents collapse. The disciplined do not ask, "Is this exciting?" They ask, "Is this necessary?" That shift changes everything. Boredom only feels unbearable because you have trained yourself to flee it. If you stay, if you resist the urge to switch, something happens. The mind adapts. Restlessness fades. The repetition becomes rhythm, and rhythm becomes identity. The person who can operate without emotional stimulation is almost impossible to derail, because their effort does not depend on feeling, it depends on structure. Most people will never reach their potential, not because the work was too painful, because the work became too predictable, and they mistook predictability for stagnation. But predictability is where strength is forged, quietly, without applause, without spikes, without novelty, just repetition, and the willingness to remain when it's no longer exciting.
If you're done living in distraction,
Like and subscribe. This channel exists to help you protect your attention and build something real. Boredom does not make noise. It erodes. You don't wake up one day and quit. You reduce effort, slightly. You delay, slightly. You compromise, slightly. And each slightly feels harmless. You skip one session. You tell yourself it's minor. You scroll instead of study. You tell yourself you'll double tomorrow. You lower intensity just enough to feel relief. Relief becomes the reward. That is the collapse. Not dramatic, incremental. Pain forces decision. Boredom allows drift. And drift is harder to detect because you're still technically involved, still showing up, still trying. But the edge is gone. You stop pushing reps to the limit. You stop refining small details. You stop asking hard questions. Because refinement is repetitive. Repetition is dull. Momentum doesn't disappear instantly. It thins, like water slowly leaking from a crack. You don't notice until pressure is gone. The most dangerous quit is the slow one, the one masked as balance, the one disguised as I just need variety, the one framed as I've plateaued. Plateaus are not signals to leave, they are signals to stay longer. But staying longer requires tolerating sameness. Here is the cost of leaving too early. You never reach depth. You stay in surface competence, good but not exceptional, capable but not formidable. Every serious pursuit has a desert phase, long, flat, uncelebrated, where progress is microscopic and boredom whispers, "This isn't worth it." If you listen, you restart. If you restart, you return to the exciting beginning, and you repeat the same cycle forever. This is why many people look busy, but never become dangerous. They are constantly beginning, never enduring. The gym beginner is excited. The investor starting out is energized. The creator in month 1 is motivated. Month 12, routine. No applause, no visible leap, just repetition. The ones who endure month 12 change. The ones who leave return to month 1. Boredom convinces you that nothing is happening, but internally, structure is forming. Skill is stabilizing. Capacity is increasing. It just doesn't feel dramatic. You mistake feeling stagnant for being stagnant. They are not the same. Growth at depth is subtle, silent, gradual. When you quit from boredom, you interrupt compounding, and compounding only works for those who stay. The quiet collapse is this. You convince yourself that new equals progress, but new is just reset. Reset feels alive. Depth feels repetitive. If you constantly need excitement to continue, you will always remain in the early stages, because depth has no fireworks. Look at the road in front of you. Long, straight, unremarkable. Most turn around here, not because they are wounded, because they are tired of seeing the same horizon. And that is where separation happens. The few who stay in monotony begin to move beyond it. The many who flee monotony stay where they started. Boredom is the final filter. It decides who compounds and who restarts.
If boredom is the filter,
Discipline is the response. Not intensity, not motivation, repetition. You do not conquer boredom by making things exciting. You conquer it by removing the need for excitement. When the work becomes dull, that is the signal. Not to switch, to settle, to deepen, to refine. The middle phase is where identity is forged. When no one is watching, when progress is invisible, when nothing feels new. This is where you decide what you are. Someone who requires stimulation, or someone who executes regardless. The disciplined person does not wake up asking, "Do I feel like it?" They ask, "Is it scheduled?" If it is scheduled, it is done. No negotiation. You must remove emotional voting from your effort. If your feelings get a vote, boredom wins. If structure decides, monotony becomes irrelevant. Structure is freedom, because it frees you from mood. Here is the shift. Stop chasing novelty. Start respecting repetition. The same drill, the same habit, the same standard, day after day. You will not feel dramatic growth. You will not feel constant excitement. You will feel steadiness, and steadiness compounds. The strongest people are not fueled by emotion. They are stabilized by systems. They trust routine more than inspiration. They trust schedule more than desire. If you can sit in monotony without searching for escape, you become rare. If you can repeat without emotional spikes, you become durable. Durability wins, not bursts, not surges. Durability. Pain tests your limits. Boredom tests your character. Pain demands courage. Boredom demands patience. Courage is visible. Patience is quiet. Most people can be brave for a moment. Few can be patient for years. That is why most quit from boredom, not pain. Pain ends quickly. Monotony stretches endlessly. But the one who accepts monotony eventually transcends it. The work becomes rhythm. The rhythm becomes identity. The identity becomes unshakable. You do not need fireworks. You need follow-through. You do not need intensity. You need endurance. Stay when it's dull. Stay when it's repetitive. Stay when it feels ordinary. That is where separation happens. If this sharpened your discipline, like the video. If you value endurance over excitement, subscribe. No hype, just repetition, and the strength built inside it.